Welcome back to the Swing Fix, everyone. In honor of Tommy finally getting it done this last weekend, we're going to talk about some incredible compression drills and most importantly, how to flight it down since we're finally coming into that off season. You know, when I think about ball striking, there's a lot of players that come to mind. You know, obviously Tiger, Rory, but one that I've always really mimicked my teaching style on is Tommy Fleetwood. And why I always think of Tommy is he has always been one of the greatest iron strikers, in my opinion. And, you know, why I really replicate a lot of what I teach behind him is how he is able to really compress the ball. And, you know, there was one moment in his career that really at least resonates with me, and I think it should resonate with a lot of us because, you know, we all go through these, you know, peaks and valleys in golf, and, you know, he was one that really almost stepped away from the game before he kind of went on this monumental rise, and it was all due to the fact that he had a really hard time creating compression. He had a really hard time creating a swing that could be consistent, and especially consistent under pressure. And his coach found a way for him to not only mimic compression, but it ended up being a motion that turned into his actual swing, which is truly iconic to this day. And, you know, I think all of us, you know, whether we watch a lot of pro golf or not, if we saw that sawed-off finish, even in a silhouetted golfer, we would know immediately that's Tommy Fleetwood. And so whether you've taken a lesson from me or not, this is a drill that I really set up a lot of my students on, and it's a great 3-ball sequence to really get a great understanding of how to create compression, and most importantly, how to understand the tools behind compression. And what I mean by that is people have such a misconception of how to create compression. And what I'm saying is people think compression is just, I just got to get my hands ahead of it. And yeah, of course, in the simplest terms, that is what compression is, but we need so much more than that in the golf swing. And what I mean by that is to truly create compression, what it actually is being able to stabilize the body while opening the chest and holding the angle through to make contact. And so, you know, when I look at a lot of people, you know, and I see all these other YouTube clips of finding that hack to create compression, I see all this stuff of like, hey, just move that ball back. But what people don't realize is those are just Band-Aids. And what those Band-Aids are really gonna do is hurt you in the long term. And what I mean by that is when we start moving this ball too far back, what ends up happening is our body starts getting too far ahead and we start having to create more flip. And I know we've all seen people do this. And so I really wanna make sure that we don't start putting Band-Aids on our game. We all know what a Band-Aid does. It helps us for that quick moment. We feel like a god for a second, and then that falls off and that game just gets worse and worse. And then we have to come in and try to find something for that long term. This is one of those drills that I really use. I use it myself constantly. And this was something, like I said, that Tommy used to really bring himself back from the depths of quitting the game. And so, like I said, this is a simple little 3-ball sequence. The first sequence is you're gonna start with your feet together, and what you really wanna focus on is keeping the hands ahead. It's gonna be a little half swing shot, and you wanna feel like you're dragging the handle through to this low left finish, okay? And what you really wanna make sure is that this chest is getting all the way through to the target, okay? And the point of this drill is really feeling the shaft lean coming through, okay? So it's gonna look, I'm gonna go and look just like this. So it's just gonna be a simple little, like this. And what you wanna see at the end is us maintaining the angle through impact, okay? Your next shot, as we come through, is going to be that same feel with the upper body, but now what I want you guys to do is to get more into our traditional setup, okay? And now the thought comes into is I want to activate those hips, okay? And why we want to take the hips out of the sequence first is so we can really start feeling what it's like to just create the chest movement, okay? And I know if you guys have taken a lesson from me, I'm all about building the swing ground up, and most importantly, getting you guys to understand the sequence step by step so this foundation can really build into what you're doing, okay? So as I said, the feet together pulls the hips out, really gets you to understand what this chest needs to do. The next phase of this drill, we're gonna get our normal base, and that's gonna be that same feel where we're pulling this handle through and making sure that we're getting that full chest turn. And once again, holding that angle through, and you should really feel kind of your obliques engaging. Make sure we're maintaining that angle with the shaft and really creating that great compression. And then this last phase of the drill is all about feeling that same thought process going up, but now we're gonna let the body complete the full rotation. And this is where we have to really use a lot of control. And what I mean by that is not letting everything go away. Because what I see so much is we get up here, our minds tend to go blank, and we just start throwing our hands. It is one of the worst habits, it's one of the hardest habits to break, is that cast coming into impact, okay? And so this feel, just like we did on those first two sequences, is we're gonna still feel ourselves kind of having that nice Fleetwood finish, pulling through, but now it's gonna be a full swing to the top, half swing to the finish. And so it's gonna look just like this. Nice setup. And like I said, what you really should be seeing is step by step, perfect compression, and most importantly, whether you're in a bay or on a range, those balls should almost be building a ladder of straight, straight, and straight, just building this perfect ladder up the range of perfect compression as you go up. So one of my other favorite drills that I've taken from Tommy's book is this block drill right here. And obviously from the untrained eye, this looks terrifying. From the trained eye, this looks terrifying. It should be. And why this looks so terrifying is this is one of the greatest control drills that you can really do. And the whole purpose of this drill is to really control our takeaway and to really make sure that we have a good grasp of how to keep everything in line from start to finish, but most importantly, get this club face under control. You guys know as well as me how important club face control is, and especially as we've worked through that 3-ball sequence, now that we have this great compression, now if we can get stuff started online, now we're gonna be an incredible ball striker. And so how this drill is set up, you wanna put an alignment stick kind of right next to your golf club. You wanna take another alignment stick, whether you're in the studio here, we have alignment discs that you can use. If you're gonna use like a 7 or an 8 iron, you're gonna put this at a 60-degree angle straight behind where impact would be, okay? Or if you're outside, just go ahead and stick that into the ground. So that way we have a good visual as to how we are going to start the golf swing, okay? What this is gonna really help us do is not allow us to get too shallow on the way back. And this is something that I've really started to see, throughout the year, because I think whether it's just this phenomenon lately that people are just so interested in getting shallow and starting the swing shallow, and it's something that can be so detrimental in the golf swing. And this is something that I look at Tommy as one of probably the greatest at, that he is so conscious of really making sure that he is staying wide and most importantly, keeping that club path in plane to start. I think a lot of people try to cheat the swing path by pulling it inside to get that in to out number, and they think that that's creating a shallow swing, which yes, in the essence of shallow, you are, but the idea of creating consistency, it's going to be very hard to repeat that. And that's where I really love this drill. This is something that I constantly work on with my own game, just simply for the fact that it's very easy for us to want to roll these wrists back. And this drill really keeps us in that constant reminder of maintaining our angles, staying a little more vertical and in plane, okay? The other thing you can use for this drill is whether you have a workout wedge, or the simplest thing to do is to just take a dozen of golf balls. Obviously take the golf balls out, put it next to your golf ball, so that way you have something to really let you know if you are coming over the top, okay? So, like I said, this line right here is to really help maintain our takeaway so we can keep everything in plane. And so we can really make sure that when we are starting this swing, that we are starting everything down the line and that we are not manipulating that swing path. This block and or box right here is to help make sure that we are not coming across, okay? So once we have the drill set up, we wanna make sure we get everything feeling comfortable. And what I tell everyone when we're doing this drill is make sure these first couple, you kind of wanna trust the visual, okay? And what I mean by that is do a few pumps. You know, let yourself know like you have room to do this before you actually hit the shot, okay? So when we're starting to really feel comfortable with where the setup is, and most importantly where the angle is, and you've been pumping this a few times, what I want you guys to do is first of all, start with the block out a little bit so you can really feel some confidence, and start hitting a few shots first like this. So you can really feel stable. And what I want you guys to really make sure you can do is eventually work this into tighter and tighter, because this is what's gonna really make you start feeling comfortable on focusing on true compression, on focusing on clean contact, and on focusing on building the proper gait. To where eventually it's just enough room for your club to fit in. So today what I want to talk about are a few elements that really help us flight a ball properly, because this is something that I see a lot of my students do very incorrectly. I see a lot of other people do this very incorrectly. And so what I want to start with is the proper setup, okay? So the proper setup when we are trying to flight a golf ball. You know, if we think about normal setup in golf, right? Especially with, say, a 7-iron. 7-iron we want to usually have right in the middle of our body. So if we are trying to flight a shot, what we want to think about is we want to always have this one ball back of center, okay? Why we want to have one ball back of center is because our whole thought when we are trying to flight is we are trying to really think about covering the golf ball, okay? This goes back into what we were talking about earlier with the idea of what Tommy does so well. You know, his whole golf swing stems around this sensation of covering a golf ball and really creating that perfect compression throughout every single club, okay? The other thing that I want to really talk about today is tempo. When we are trying to flight a golf ball, this is not the time to try to Hulk Hogan this thing as hard as we can. This is all about being smooth, okay? This is where I see so many of my students when I try to have them flight a shot where they stand up here and just lash on this as hard as they can. And why this is such a problem is what this ends up doing is it's so counterintuitive to the sensation of flighting. Because what it does is it actually exasperates that spin rate and ends up ballooning the shot. So not only do we lose distance, but now we've actually created a higher launching shot than our traditional stock shot. And so we have the double negative going on. So now we've lost control, we've lost our distance. So now we've missed the green altogether. And so throughout a flighted shot, we wanna make sure that we have this ball, one ball back of center. We wanna be thinking very smooth rhythm. And then we also wanna really be thinking of that abbreviated covered finish. So that way this launch angle stays low, keeps that spin under control. So that way we can really stay under control with that distance, but most importantly, stay on target. So before we really start hitting shots in this flighted setup, what I want you guys to do is grab a piece of tape or grab a towel and just start getting used to this idea of the new ball position, okay? Having it just back of center. And what I would do is get used to kind of lining up like this and just trying to brush the ground in front, okay? All we're trying to do is hold the angle without clipping the tape. And what I mean by that is the worst thing we can do when we are trying to cover the ball and flight it is flip this wrist down. Obviously, if we flip, what's gonna happen is we are going to clip that tape, and what you should see is the tape will start to ripple up, okay? Sometimes it'll rip all the way, but all in all, it'll start rippling up, or if you have that towel, the towel will actually grab all the way. So the point of this drill is just to get you guys used to brushing the grass and getting used to covering with this nice abbreviated shot, okay? What I would do when you're doing this is not going full rip yet, just get used to that 3/4 to 3/4 swing before we start ripping into a golf ball. So as I was saying, we want to really start out keeping this a little more narrow, one ball back of center. And on these first couple, before we really start going full speed, is I would just start in more of like a 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock position. So just thinking more, just kind of these little low shots, just you can kind of start seeing how this ball is going to react, okay? It's one of these shots where it really does come off well, but the other thing is we really got to start understanding what this ball is going to do off the club face. And the thing that I find so many people that they struggle with is not finishing the swing when they're doing this. So we really want to make sure that we get this nice rhythm and let your body go all the way through. Once you start feeling comfortable with those 9 to 3s, then what I like to do is kind of think of like building windows out there. And what I mean by that is thinking of this like a full stock shot, a flighted shot, and then like a punch shot. And why I like to do this is, like, for me, I like to understand what every single club in my bag will do. So that way when that situation comes, I'm not in that kind of fear of like, what am I gonna do? I know what I'm gonna do. My body isn't afraid to react. I can grab a club and stand there confidently. And so, you know, especially when I'm practicing, getting ready for a tournament, you know, my first thought will always be going full stock, you know, seeing that nice high reaction shot. Then seeing that nice little flighted shot. And seeing those differences in those carry numbers. And seeing that thought of like, okay, my full stock shots flying 190, my flighted shots going 160, and then if I really go a full punch shot, what is that gonna do? You know, in that 110 thought process. And why would I ever need that full punch shot? Well, I happen to hit it behind trees sometimes. So it's nice for me to have that ability to shape a shot So I know how to still get to a green. So I know how I can shape a shot around a tree so that way I can still have a putt for birdie. I like to always have these options available so I can always still attack a pin. This is what's always made me feel more comfortable within my own game. And it's something that I really like to let my students have these tools so they can really push their games to the next level. You know, the more prepared we can be on a golf course, the better our scores are going to be. And so when we're practicing, it's not about how many shots we can hit. It's about the quality of what we're doing. It's about thinking through a situation. It's about taking a situation and analyzing it in a different way. It's about manipulating the ball flight and seeing what that does. Because a lot of us, like myself, for example, I don't ever hit that full high stock flying shot because I don't like seeing the ball go up in the air because I feel out of control when I do that. So a lot of times I feel more under control hitting a flighted shot in. So I want you guys to all try this drill out, see what's more comfortable to you, and see what this will really do, bringing your scores down. So whether you guys are practicing indoors or hitting it on the range, make sure we're using lineman sticks, those blocks, but most importantly, when we're doing those drills, use those pump functions, don't just go full rip. And most importantly, thank you all for tuning into the Swing Fix. We look forward to seeing you guys next month.